What's good, everybody? If I had some breaking news sounders, I would be playing them right now. I am just Joey Powell, but I'm here as part of InsideCarolina.com's Coast to Coast podcast because we got a little bit of breaking news for you. We have a commitment instant pod, not to be confused with Instant Pot, Instapot. You know, a lot of you guys probably have significant others or maybe yourselves cook food in those. No, this is different. This is an instant pod, instant reaction, talking about a commitment for Hubert Davis and the basketball heels here on Coast to Coast on InsideCarolina.com. Appreciate you guys joining us, whether you're on YouTube or listening to us via audio. That's awesome. You know it's a big deal because I'm actually taking time out of my vacation with mi familia to come to you guys because, I mean, if Sherrell and Sean are ready to talk, I got to be here to make sure that things stay on the rails while they're giving you so much knowledge your head's going to spin. So we appreciate you being here. If you haven't, follow us on social, on YouTube, whatever. Subscribe. Make sure you're getting this type of content. And when there are big announcements like this that we're having right now, today, you won't miss it. So, boys, without further ado, going to bring in Sean Moran and Sherrell McMillan, the two guys that actually make this show what it is every time. Fellas, we're going to talk about Mr. Seth Trimble from Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin. Folks may know Menomonee Falls because a young man named JP Tokoto once graced the court and the campus in Chapel Hill from that same area. And Seth Trimble, 6'3", 185. Sean, let me hear about his game, man.
Yeah, so 6'3", 175, 185, depending on where you're at. And I think a lot of people always talk about being a three-level scorer, but I think Trimble is a guy that can actually do that. Most importantly for him is how explosive he is. And I think, you know, everybody remembers JP Tokoto, and there are some similarities when they do go up off of 2 feet in terms of how they rise. So I think in the videos, you'll see some similarities, but once again, he's a point guard, very good at getting downhill and attacking. You know, I think a lot of times you see guards and point guards that they prefer either the left to right crossover or right to left. They have a preference. For him, you know, he can do both sides equally as well. And he also has a very strong in and out move. So, you know, with those two, he's able to really freeze the defender and get a step on them. And then he can get to the paint where, once again, he is extremely explosive off of 2 feet. So he can get to the rim. He can finish at the rim. He can take contact with his explosive leaping ability. And upper body. And then, you know, from a outside and shooting perspective, he's very comfortable getting into the mid range. You know, if he's not able to get all the way to the basket, taking a step back and hitting from 15 to 17. From the 3-point line, he shot 35% in the high school season. You know, I'm coming off of watching a fair amount of highlight videos, so I feel like I haven't seen him miss in quite some time. But I think in general, he's got a pretty quick release. He's got a high arcing shot, and he's comfortable, like most high school kids these days, of beyond the NBA 3-point line. I think in terms of when he does get to UNC, because there have been obviously a lot of guards that have struggled somewhat freshman year. I think for him, it's he tends to bring the ball down to his knees a lot. So I think just trying to quicken that just a tad will help him going forward. But you have a guy, you know, 24 has him ranked 101. I think everybody has talked about the bump that he will get when they come up with the rankings. Rivals has him at 34, so I don't know if he'll go that high, but I think, you know, you are looking at a legit 4-star point guard that is more explosive than a lot of the other point guards in the country right now.
He feels like a top 50 kid to me, but again, I don't watch half the stuff that you guys do. And I will say, I know it's a highlight reel, but I've seen a couple of instances where he is not afraid to punch on some people that's punch on people for our listeners, not punch people. He's not afraid to yam on some people in traffic, which we'll get to a question that you guys know I'm going to ask in a little bit. So we'll put a pin in that for a second. Sherrell, let us know how this recruitment went down that led to Mr. Trimble making his verbal commitment to the University of North Carolina Tar Heels.
Well, I want to say, I think the first thing we need to address is that he didn't get this offer because JP Tokoto is his brother. I think some people might see that and say, oh, well, Carolina's just doing him a favor. No, the kid can play. And if he couldn't play, UNC wouldn't be recruiting him. So I think that needs to be said to start with. From there, it really, I think, picked up when Hubert Davis became head coach. Brad Frederick is his primary assistant, and there was some communication from Frederick and Davis and Trimble there for a couple of weeks, probably a couple of weeks after Hubert Davis got the job. And I think that those conversations led to more conversations, which led to the eventual scholarship offer in May, which led to the official visit being scheduled. And I think the official visit was a big deal for Trimble because when you go somewhere when you're 11 or 10 or 9, of course it's going to seem like magical and the most
Right.
wonderful place of all time.
Everything is Disney World at that age.
Right, exactly. He's 16 now, will be 17 in a little bit. And so you have a different perspective, as a teenager than you did as a little kid. So I think going back and just seeing if those same feelings were evoked when he went to Chapel Hill was a big deal. And then just, hearing Hubert Davis's plan for him, I think was a really big deal too. Just knowing that he still wants to continue to play with pace and, put the ball in Trimble's hands and let him go get up the court and kind of do what he does. So I think all those things should be considered when you start talking about his recruitment and kind of how it played out. I would add that one of the questions we had, I think, about Hubert Davis, me and Sean talked about this in that podcast that we did the day before he was hired when we were going over all the candidates, was how well will he communicate and identify targets? And I think, right now, I think he's nailing it out of the park, honestly. There's probably one offer that didn't make a lot of sense. There's no need to name names, but probably one offer that we kind of shook our heads at, but the
I know
rest
collectively
of
the three of us did, but yeah.
them, right. But the rest of them, he's done a tremendous job. I think the Trimble one is a perfect example. This is a player who's ascending, a player who is getting better, who's, opening up eyes nationally. And UNC jumped into the recruitment. They secured an official visit, and then they locked him up, pretty soon thereafter. And that takes a lot of coordination between the staff, and it takes a head coach who really has a clear vision of what he wants to do.
I love that you pointed out that sequence too, because not to toot y'all's horns, but toot because we talked about once this thing opened up and once the staff got into place and visits were allowed to start happening on campus again, there's going to be a lot more of this just warp speed process. And it seems that not only have they adapted well, they've adapted well for a new staff, which, speaks to not only Coach Davis, but his assistants as well. Sherrell, it seems like he is growing. His game is improving rapidly, which we often see at players his age. I'm going to ask both of you guys this. At 6'3", he could still grow a little bit more too. Do you think that's going to happen? I mean, you consider, JP was a pretty tall kid and played, again, he played more of a wing. But do we think Seth could actually grow another inch or two, being just 16 now? Sherrell?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I stopped growing at like 14. I've been 5'8.5" for like 20 years now.
Sean, what about you? Do you think you can put some more height on?
No, it's a great question. I mean, I guess the one I would want to know is he a legit 6'3" right now, or is he more, a 6'1.5", 6'2", and he grows into that 6'3", or does he grow into that 6'4"? I mean, not maybe we'll talk about this, but I think one thing, we're all talking about him ascending, and not to jump, a few years down the line, but usually UNC has been pretty lucky with really from the time Roy Williams arrived, of having these, 5-star or high 4-star players that for whatever reason there was some type of NBA deficiency that kept them in school, 2-3 years. And here's a player who, maybe it's, probably not like Kobe White, but at the same time, he has kind of some NBA attributes that could make him attractive earlier than you might imagine somebody at his current ranking. So just something to kind of keep in mind. But once again, if he does grow, I think he has the ability to play both point guard and off the ball, and I think that's kind of how UNC probably imagines him being able to play both guard spots in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, Joey, and if he grows to 6'4", 6'5", I mean, you're talking about kind of a rare deal. Someone with his build, he's not a skinny kid. With his athleticism and all the the other requisite skills he has, you're talking about something really unique if he's able to grow to 6'4", 6'5". I mean, he's unique now, but even more so, if he grows a few inches.
That's kind of where my head was going. Is if you look at him now, he doesn't look like, he doesn't look like Marcus Page, right? And I mentioned that because obviously the ties with Marcus and Seth's brother. All right, guys, humor me here. I'm going to ask this. And by the way, I want to go back. No, Sean did not say that Seth Trimble is going to be Kobe White, but he did say that there are some potential parallels in their measurables. I want to make sure we pump the brakes so there's no selective hearing going on. But you got to humor me here. I'm going to ask. The videos that I've seen of Seth Trimble looks like he's got a little bit of dog in him. Do you think that's fair to say? Sherrell, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I said this last time. I need to ask why, but it's definitely there. Just talking to him on the phone, kind of talking to people in his circle. There's definitely a chip on his shoulder, and I think that bodes well for for UNC. Again, having that at the point guard spot is different than having it at some other spots, especially with his defensive, acumen or prowess, whatever you want to use. Someone with a chip on their shoulder, with his size and athleticism, playing defense is kind of the lead, of your defense, can be really impactful and can really disrupt what the offense wants to do on the opposing team. So even if he comes in, let's just say, he comes in and he doesn't need to score a ton, he can still really impact the game defensively, because not only can he guard point guards, but he should be able to guard, college twos as well, just because of his build and his athleticism.
Yeah, he does have some range and he moves his hips really well. All right, Sean, last question before I give you guys your parting shots and we get out of here on this special edition commitment pod, talking about Seth Trimble out of Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin. Sean, explain how a player with this skill set will fit with what the roster looks to be when he gets here. And I realize that's asking you to play Nostradamus a little bit, but assuming who, most general, general knowledge will tell you will be on the roster, how do you see a player like Seth Trimble fitting in?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all expect. Granted, we said this last year, but I think a betting man would bet that Caleb Love will not be around for a third year in Chapel Hill, so that would leave really R.J. Davis as the primary ball handler. What should be a junior R.J. Davis or a third year R.J. Davis, and I think, in terms of the fit, point guard is one of the necessities in this recruiting class that they're able to lock in early, along with a big man, and they'll probably still look at a little bit more on the big. So here you have two competent ball handlers. I think their strengths and weaknesses kind of mesh well together. Where once again, Trimble's a little bigger, a little more powerful, definitely a better finisher at the rim. I think RJ is the better shooter, but now you have Trimble, who can, if it's a bigger point guard, he can guard the one or guard the two, so they can switch off. And it also gives Hubert Davis the ability to, could he start from day one? Quite possibly, but at the same time gives them a little flexibility that maybe he comes off the bench early on and is able to grow into that role. So I think the fit is definitely there. And I think, Carolina could use a player like him, where he can handle the ball, he can shoot it, but he can really get to the rim and finish. And then, as Sherrell mentioned, defensively, I think that's where he can set the tone as an aggressive defender, pressuring the opposing ball handler, full court, half court, however they want to play. I mean, even some of the video I was watching, he was guarding Patrick Baldwin in a high school game, who's 6'9", 6'10", and he's a little more, he's a little more on the skinny side. So it wasn't a problem for him guarding him, and he was able to, for the most part, keep him out of the paint. So I think the fit is there and should mesh well with what we think will be a third year RJ Davis, as well as whoever else they have on the wing.
Yeah, Tar Heel fans should definitely be excited, if nothing else, for the savvy that Trimble brings to Chapel Hill. And again, looking at how this class is starting to stack up and how quickly things have started to materialize. Sherrell, any final thoughts you want to add as to maybe how this speaks for what the staff is hoping to pull together in just a few short months?
Yeah, it's a big win for UNC. They've had 3 players come out of Wisconsin in the last 35 years: Joe Wolf, JP Tokoto, and now Seth Trimble. So it's not an easy place for UNC to recruit from. And then I would add just a couple of other things. As far as we talked about identification and communication, recruiting is relationships. And I know that sounds cliche, but when you're UNC and you're able to find any kind of advantage in recruiting within the margins, you have to take advantage of it. And they did that, with Seth Trimble. So, again, kudos to them just in how fast this all went and how they were able to identify, communicate, recruit, and then get a commitment. And then number two, I would say, just a general PSA. I like to do these every once in a while. Let's view Seth Trimble as Seth Trimble and not as JP Tokodo's brother. It's very easy just because there's familiarity with Tokodo, because the way they jump looks exactly the same, and they look alike, to just say, oh, that's JP Tokodo's brother, and then apply everything that we saw from JP Tokodo to Seth Trimble. So let's not do that. He's his own player, and he's going to build and create his own legacy at UNC. So just my PSA to fans is to view him as his own player, his own person.
See, man, I love that delicate context that you bring back to us, and make sure that you kind of rein the fans in, but you're doing a service to the young man as well, allowing him to be him, nothing more, nothing less. All right, Sean, give me two pennies before we get out of here.
Sure. So the first one, I think, over the last month or so, we've always been talking about these June visits and what are we looking for. And I think, we talked several times about that June 15th and 16th official dates and how would that turn out. And you kind of always felt that there would be the pressure on, either Bradley or Trimble to potentially commit. And now we're seeing Trimble do that just a few days after he was on campus. So I think, once again, UNC played that very well to lock that in before the July recruiting period. And then speaking of the July recruiting period, I'm looking forward to, after watching a bunch of highlight videos of getting out and seeing Trimble in person. I think the explosiveness is there. That is easily evident from the video. I'm just looking to see, how big is he really, what is his quickness level, and just watching him in person against some of the best competition in the country.
And hey, Tar Heel fans do not need to tremble about the future of point guard in Chapel Hill anytime soon. And guys, I'm going to make one last supposition before we get out of here. I think I know what put Seth Trimble over the edge to come to Carolina. I think he went to Johnny T-shirt on this visit. I think when they were on Franklin Street, they ended up at Johnny T-shirt. Seth and his family, I probably got a little wisdom from JP Tokodo, having spent his time in Chapel Hill. He knew about Johnny T-shirt, said, hey, y'all, let me scoop you to something. Took them into Johnny T, and they saw the amount of UNC stuff that you can purchase from Johnny T-shirt right there on West Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. JohnnyT-shirt.com, owned by alumni, managed by alumni, big Tar Heel fans. They are big fans of Inside Carolina. And I'm going to guess they're probably going to be big fans of Seth Trimble, just as they were with his brother, JP Tokoto. So I'm sure that family saw Johnny T-shirt, saw the logoed merchandise that Johnny T-shirt had to offer, and were like, hey, we're not going to get this anywhere else.
How could you say no to Johnny T-shirt?
You can't. I mean, it's you got Hubert Davis asking. He's like, oh, by the way, just see Johnny T-shirt. And so I'm assuming that's probably what happened. Inside Carolina premium subscribers know they get the extra 10% off the top. So show Johnny T-shirt some love. Use your extra 10%. Get all the good swag at all the good prices. And again, that's just a little editorial supposition by yours truly. But congratulations to Seth Trimble and his family, putting into his recruitment, committing to the University of North Carolina, and Hubert Davis and staff. Today, we appreciate Sherrell McMillan and Sean Moran, as always, delivering the goods right here for you as the news breaks on InsideCarolina.com. And for Sherrell and for Sean, I'm just Joey Powell. This has been the Coast to Coast Commitment Sudden Edition, announcing or following Seth Trimble's announcement that he's coming to Chapel Hill. Appreciate you guys listening. Remember, subscribe, rate, review us. We'll check you next time here on the Coast to Coast podcast on InsideCarolina.com. Late.